Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the IT Collab podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Taylor. My buddy Brandon Barnes is not able to join us this week. He's under the weather, so we're going to miss him, but it kind of works out because for the first time we have two guests on, which will be a lot of fun. We're circling back to one of our favorite topics. So we've had a couple guests on and something I'm always fascinated to learn more about, which is CMMC. So welcome, Bobby and Kaylee. Thank you for joining us.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
We've mentioned you before in the podcast in previous episodes, just because your guys' resources are so good, and you guys are really doing some thought leadership. But you guys want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you guys do?
Kaylee, go first.
Okay, I'll go first. Wow. Okay. My name's Kaylee Floyd. I am the marketing director for Axiom, and we are an MSP based in Jacksonville, Florida that is focused on CMMC services for small to medium-sized businesses. And yeah, we have a podcast, just like Nathan said, called Climbing Mount CMMC that we started about 1.5 years ago that just talks about, and we're just very vulnerable about our journey and what it's like to climb this huge mountain of CMMC. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Bobby, you have anything to add to that?
It's hard to follow that up. My name's Bobby. I'm the CEO. Kaylee is my daughter. And she started working for me when you were a teenager, like a long time ago.
It's been a while that we've been working together.
And so as we started,
That's fun.
as we started kind of going into that CMMC journey, I started having her start working on the marketing material, and she's like, Dad, I don't know what any of this stuff is. And so over the years of us working on it, like she's had to read it and curate it. It's like, she couldn't avoid learning it. Like it has really gotten into her DNA. And now she's like correcting me. She's like, no, Dad, it's actually, 6 years, not 7 years, and it's this and this. She knows it about as well as anyone. She's definitely the smartest CMMC marketing director on the planet. I can say that probably with absolute authority.
Thank you.
She really knows her stuff. And so she's actually been attending more stuff. You'll start seeing her on probably even speaking some on some of the stuff just because, and I think she's probably going to get her CCP this year.
That's nice of you, but you're introducing me and not you.
Well, I know. I'm super proud.
That's a great moment, man. You should be. That's awesome. And yeah, you should never underestimate the marketing people. I work with a couple where they know their stuff. When you have to write it up and fact check it, and just digging into the content is a lot of how you get ahead of it. So, I mean, your podcast is impressive to me. You guys release a couple episodes a week. You guys are cranking on that. So nice work.
We typically do it every Thursday, but just there's been so much moving and shaking. The 32 CFR coming out with some of those rules. Then CKeast, we were participating in there. And then there were just some other episodes that we had, like we had Dr. Ron Ross. He helped author the whole 800-171 framework.
So it's his fault.
Yeah. He actually doesn't like it when you use the word framework. It's like it's special publication. It's not real.
Yeah, special publication, SP,
Yeah. And so we kind of had to split his into two. One is about just his take on 172 that just recently got released. And then the other one was just about his journey of his life and what he went through. And that was probably one of my favorite podcasts that we got to sit down and listen to him talk about his life. And it was, I mean, the man's forgotten more about compliance than I will ever know.
Oh, man.
And
it was a special, I got really kind of giddy. And Kaylee's like,
yeah, I had to calm him down. I'm like, yeah, chill.
It's like if you're a music fan and you meet Elvis, I mean, it's like, that's kind
right.
Of for me.
You were fanboying out, huh?
Oh, yeah. Hardcore.
It's awesome. Well, I'd love to kind of get your guys' thoughts. Obviously, we've had a few people on in the past talking about CMMC. I'm a couple miles wide and an inch deep on the topic, so I try to kind of keep my thumb on it, but it's not a core focus of my world. So I love learning more. I know that, we're recording this here right at the end of the year. There's 2 weeks left in the year, and January 1st, some things changed, right? So some things have changed the last couple of months, and some things are changing in the next couple of weeks. So walk us through what's new and what you guys are seeing.
Kaylee, you take the lead on that.
Are you always gonna push these over to me now? I don't know. He's like trying not to talk
She has a
anymore.
nice graph that where she walks through.
That's
this.
nice of you.
She's really good.
I
at it.
do have a graph that talks us through the phased rollout of CMMC, which people like to say. You can look at it as much as you want, but they have the ability to change whatever they'd like. So, I mean, that's fair, but we're going to go with what we know so far, which is what the phased rollout is that they have released in the 32 CFR final rule.
Who's they?
And so we're basing it off of that for right now.
You say they? Who's they?
They. Oh, sorry. Yes, the Department of Defense. Yeah, you may.
That's it.
You may have heard of them.
Yes.
Yes. If you are somebody that is in the defense industrial base, the DIB, you should be paying attention to this stuff because
Yes.
it is indeed happening if you're a contractor or a subcontractor in that space. Starting on December 17th, which, well, they're kind of, Cyber AB has just kind of announced that they are going to be pushing this back, but assessments can begin. They are saying now starting in January. So that's what they're saying right now.
32 CFR says it can start in December, but the Cyber AB, so for those of you who may not know, the Cyber AB is a nonprofit organization that has a single contract with the DoD to manage the whole ecosystem. So C3POs, the people that do the audit, those organizations have to report and they get certified through Cyber AB.
Right.
They're kind of the last person on the totem pole. And so they find out the last about what the DoD is doing. So they found out because they're not a part of the government. So they found out with us for the most part when we were finding out how the 32 CFR rule was going to happen. So there's all these other things that they had to do to get ready for the audits to happen in December, and they just didn't have time. So they pushed it back to December 3rd, I believe is when
January 3rd.
January 3rd, I mean, is where they can start happening.
Yeah.
So, and then the people that were already scheduled for December are having to punt their assessments, which is interesting. So.
Yeah. So what this phased rollout is saying, the CMMC phased rollout is saying, is that starting on, when Cyber AB is allowing people to, you can start doing assessments, but they're kind of also sharing, the DoD is also sharing in this perspective when you are going to start seeing self-assessments and level 2 assessments and certification requirements inside of contracts, which that is also very much related to the 48 CFR final rule, which is not out yet. So we are assuming, that this will be released somewhere in June of 2025. Okay, somewhere around that time.
Well, it's going to be like probably February or March, and then we'll go in effect because it has
go into effect in right. So so with that rule, that is where they can say, all right, we're going to be putting these as little requirements at the bottom when you are bidding on contracts. And you're going to see self-assessments show up first. That's what they're saying. And then slowly roll in certification requirements, such as CMMC level 2 certifications. The prime contractors obviously have the opportunity to choose, what they're going to bid on. And based on if they have those requirements or not, they will bid on what they can. But the subs kind of depends on what their primes tell them to do, because the prime contractors can do whatever they want or say whatever they want to their subs. So there's a little bit of a gray area when it comes to what the prime contractors are going to require of their subcontractors. Are they going to turn around and are they going to say this coming year in 2025, are they going to say, hey, we don't want you holding us back, so we need you to get certified CMMC
Yeah.
level 2 certified by the end of this year, or we're not using you. You
Well,
know,
and
I'm not going to guarantee that,
Right.
obviously, but there's
how
some
much,
fear about
Nathan?
that.
So how much experience have you had with how the primes and subs and those people do bids?
I haven't had a lot. I mean, we've talked about it a couple guests, and I have approximate knowledge just from hearing. I've been on the CMMC peer group and other places where I just listened and try to keep up. And I mean, it sounds like it's one of those things where you have these multiple layers that are kind of interacting, right? You get final rulings which allow things to happen, but the primes are probably going to drive people quicker than the government, is the impression I have. That the primes are going to go, hey, we only want to work with people who won't get in our way when it does come to that point, and so they're going to be the ones really enforcing this before the government
government's
is.
like this massive drive-through that has,
Right.
and what they hand out is money, and they want stuff back, and so
Right.
they have the SAM.gov website, which is massive, and they are throwing out billions of dollars through that, and primes are the people that are getting and winning the bid first, right? And that's where the hook is from the DoD. And
Right.
so
That's the
gonna sit
enforcement,
on
is
that
the money.
original contract, and that's what the 32 CFR and the 48 CFR, that's the hook. Both of them, they hook into that contract, and when it's dropped on that contract, that's going to force those requirements to that contract. It's up to the primes to then push that down with the data. The CUI is what drives that, and so if they're passing that CUI type of data down to their subs, they can dictate to them how they want to do that. And that's what Kaylee's talking about, is we don't know how that's going to go. They might go, look, man, I want to bid on everything that comes out the pipe next year. When are you getting level 2? And if you're not getting level 2 by January, we're not going to give you any contracts, because and that's the kind of negotiations that we're starting to hear some people running into, is that they're running into those situations where the primes are playing more hardball. That's not the majority.
Sure.
It's not the majority that's happening, but we're seeing more and more of that happening. And they'll also do pre-announcements where they sort of announce that contracts are coming, and we're starting to see requirements being dropped on that.
Sure.
And that's driving. We're averaging about a call a day, if not more, with new potential CMMC clients reaching out to us.
Wow. Yeah, I know there's a lot of pent up demand, and so then you have these layers of the primes are starting to ask for it because they want to be ahead of it. They don't want to get caught there. Then they're asking their partners, and of course those partners are now trying to figure out how that impacts their MSPs. And I want to circle back to that in a second. But one of the questions I have for you is, from previous conversations, there seems to be so much of this that's, hey, we have the ruling, but we don't know what it's going to look like to pass an assessment. Those first assessments are going to be, from my understanding, are really going to be informative of like who passed, who didn't, why, and those sorts of moments in the next few months are really going to drive a lot of real world understanding of how this is hitting. Is that a fair statement?
Yes and no. I think it depends on who you're talking with. If you're talking with more people in our industry, absolutely. People that are MSPs that aren't used to, like,
right.
I didn't grow up in the DIB space. Like, this is something
that me neither.
3 years ago that we were like, this is what we want to do. So we just dove into the end of the pool holding a boat anchor, and it was painful. I do not suggest doing that. There are better resources to kind of cut your teeth on it. We did not go the easy route. It's been a very, very difficult challenge. And
to be fair, we didn't have those resources.
Yeah, that's why we started the podcast, is to try to help other people
kind
of go down this path. So if you're coming from an MSP, like, we're on calls and we're sitting, and most MSPs, and please don't take this the wrong way, but they are clueless. They do not
understand I agree.
The reality of what's going on. It's not that I'm like, oh, we got it figured out, you guys suck. It's not that. It's like they literally are clueless, and just as clueless as I was when I was getting into the space.
Right.
Because those are deep waters. They are very difficult to navigate.
Absolutely.
And as MSPs, we're not really trained or understand that. That's not the thing that we
No.
Now, people that have been in the DIB space, that have grown up, that have been exposed to this type of stuff, 800-171 requirements have been around for a long time, and DIBCAC has been doing assessments against organizations. So there's a lot of people that know exactly how this is going to go, and they've been involved in it. It's just not many in the MSP community that, the circles that we travel. So it is a ghost town for us, and that's what I think creates. unique challenge. And what's
Well,
additionally unique is so many companies that are MSPs work with DIB clients.
they do. They do.
And that's where the
Well, and I think it's a mindset shift for the MSPs, because MSPs go, man, I can't be the HIPAA experts and the PCI experts and the SOC experts. I'll bring in a guy. He'll take care of that side of it. But everybody needs basic security, and I know how to do that. So I'm sure CMMC's just like that. I just have to put good antivirus in and make sure we're patching. And they think it's the same sort of equation where if I'm just a high operational maturity MSP, I can service CMMC just as well as I can HIPAA or SOC or any other compliance environment. It'll be easy. And then they just don't have a clue what a paradigm shift this is. It's not the same. It's not even in the same zip code.
What do we call it though? How many phases?
Well, I feel like it's starting to add on, but there are phases of CMMC grief that you have to go through.
The 5 stages of CMMC grief.
Yeah, I believe we've counted 5, but they're starting to climb. You know.
Oh man.
Yeah,
and it's that way because you know what, Nathan, I 100% agree. I tried every shortcut. I tried every thought of solution. I did it. I tried it. I had to go through those levels. I went through the bargaining phase, the denial phase, right? I went through all of those things about how, and then eventually I said, all right, I'm going to have to do this. And I'm basically going to have to build a company inside my company that is going to do this. And that's why I was literally at a CS2 conference at Summit 7, which is fairly ironic. They're technically my competitor, but I love those guys.
Right.
I was
it's
at that
co-opetition.
And I'm like, I have now reached the acceptance phase. I know what I have to do. I need to get someone who's going to help me with the documentation piece, and I'm going to work on the design and architecture, and we're going to build something from scratch. And that's how I hired Adam, because I went to Adam. I'm like, dude, this CMMC thing is going to take off. I reached out to him last year, and I'm like, do you want to jump on this train? Because it's going to be amazing. And I'm the CEO of the company, so you're not going to have anybody who's going to stand in your way. We're going to get this done together. Let's go get this thing. And he's like, that sounds exciting. Sign me up for that, coach. And we did it, and so we basically in 8 months built a whole GCC high container from scratch and put in policies and everything and designed it so that we could support our clients out of that. And that's where I think a lot of the MSPs just really go totally sideways, is they think, let me try to do it exactly how you said. How can I still keep, how can I be half pregnant still? Either are or you aren't. You got to get all in or get out, but you can't do both. And that's just that's kind of where those 5 levels of grief kind of kick in.
Well, it's a muscle we don't have well developed in the MSP space, which is this idea of scoping. You're never going to get through some of these CMMC requirements if you don't scope. If you say, I'm just going to take my existing business and we'll bolt some controls on, you don't understand all the layers of complexity you add, because you have a business that I think most MSPs don't understand their complexity. I remember at Machine Logic, this was 3 or 4 years ago, we went to do an inventory of the vendors we worked with and the applications we ran to run our little 30-person MSP. It was 140 or 150 vendors, and you're going, how? But you put a marketing vendor and this security vendor and that security vendor and this guy and that guy and the water vendor and the accounting guy and this guy and the lawyer, and before you know it, you got 150 vendors, and you don't think through the fact that those 150 vendors, unless you work really hard, are all going to mess up your scope, and you're going to have to, every one of them is going to be another problem for your certification process. So like, well, do they have access? And all the layers of questions that open there.
It is crazy difficult. You basically, and you nailed it. Like we looked at it and said, this ain't gonna cut it. So we said, new board, what goes on here?
Sure.
What pieces are allowed to be on the board that we can play with? And we went through every application, every solution. Can we make it compliant? And then the other difficult thing is, can I do it at scale, right? Just because I can make it work doesn't mean that it's viable for us as an MSP. getting level 2 certified at this point for us is easy. And which might sound surprising. The hardest thing for us is how do we do level 2 with our clients and
Exactly.
us, like as a
Right.
team at scale? That's freaking hard. That is
Right.
really, really, really,
Right.
really hard.
Because you could enclave your own little business into a corner and say,
Sure.
hey, I've limited it down to these 17 things, or however you want to think of it. But as soon as you open the door to customer A and then customer B and their employees and their documents, it gets complicated very quickly again, right?
Yeah, it's people have been doing, we call them the 2 mountains of CMMC. That first mountain is you as an MSP getting climbing it and reaching it. And that one is not, it's hard. It's crazy hard, but it's not as hard as the second one. The second one is how do you build that mountain so that you can help all of your clients climb theirs and not jeopardize it, right? And it's everything. Imagine everything that you did, you had to prove in a court.
Right.
I do patching. Prove it. Show me how you do it. Well, I do it on these days. Show me the evidence that you've done it.
Yes.
On those days.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, well, I did it, but you didn't do it the same way. What policy did you have that said this is how you're supposed to do it? And you're like, well, I don't have that one. Failed. It's really down to the shoes on the asphalt, walking and getting it done. And that's just crazy hard.
So how deep did you go when you built that separate business? Is it a separate LLC? Like how far down did you have to go to get that done?
We basically built the container and we built into the system and design for us to be able to swivel seat for now. We've got, a lot of clients, but not all of our clients are probably going to come with us as we go down this journey for CMMC. The clients that we have to argue and fight just to do normal business with, they probably aren't going to, as we grow into that space more. I don't want to bring those boat anchors with me, but the, clients that are really understanding of where we're coming from and that we're trying to help them. And, obviously we're not going to try to get them to the level of CMMC, but those types of commercial clients. And what we see is eventually our traditional MSP space will be pretty small and our CMMC space will
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good road to go down. We talked on previous calls that we already have other parts of the government looking at CMMC as their framework, right? Like it's looking like it might be much more than the DoD before we're done. And so there's an incredible addressable market there.
Let's talk about that for just a second. So there's the FAR rule that's coming out. It's supposed to drop probably this month would be my guess, if not January. And that will encompass the whole government. So that FAR rule, we know it's going to align with 800-171. We don't know if it's going to require level 2 assessments of some capacity. We just know it's going to have that requirement. Now, they may allow you to do self-attestation or not. What does that mean? That means like if you are doing work and supporting any government agency and they're passing you any type of information they might consider controlled, unclassified, sensitive information, you would then have to go through that same level. And so the scope and capacity of people that you're going to be able to engage in that industry is massive. Our potential client base is just, me and Kaylee, we're gobsmacked. We can't even understand what.
No, understood. So then, what do you think it's gonna land for some of these other MSPs? I mean, obviously, you guys have spent an incredible amount of time and money getting here, and once you've done it, I think other people will be able to repeat it easier than you, right? You're the trailblazer. There's now groups that are helping. How much do you think it's going to split into MSPs that really decide to drink the Kool-Aid and other MSPs that start outsourcing this part of the business, right? Because there is the conversation of, hey, I'm an MSP. I've got 100 customers. 10 of them need CMMC, but they don't need to CMMC their entire businesses. They need help setting up that enclave for that small part of their business. I'm going to outsource the CMMC support of those 10 customers, but keep the rest of the business. You think that's a thing that's going to happen where, there'll be a lot of solutions providers where they're, choosing not to crack that nut and pulling in, a third party to help their customers with it?
Yeah, that's a good one. Did we lose Kaylee?
We lost her camera at least.
Yeah,
The cat was walking around. Maybe the cat knocked the camera out.
Well, that is a very good question. Obviously, it's no one knows for sure. I think the short answer is I believe eventually it will get there. How long will it take? I think a lot of that will be determined by what quality vendors come into the space. Vendors traditionally have not wanted to be transparent with what they're doing when it comes around security and other types of things. Good luck in participating in the CMMC space if you can't be transparent about how your security is, because they're all about that. So that is a really, really big deal. So MSPs that are trying to come in and they want to just say, I'm going to do just CMMC for your client. You still keep the commercial side. You have to be a very mature MSP in this space and really understand and have, to me, I think that would be like next level of what we're trying to do, to be able to come in and say, all right, we've got the wherewithal and knowledge to be and ability to be able to control the environment in such a way that we can help those people pass. And what I'm talking about is I'm envisioning like a manufacturer, right? So you got a manufacturer. Well, they're doing stuff on the floor, right? So not just cloud, like, it's a lot easier when you just keep it all up in this nice little enclave in the cloud. I'm talking about like stuff's on the floor. That's a different, how do you split that and still keep that MSP? That's a pretty difficult, that's a pretty big challenge. Can it happen? Yeah, I think it can. It's just going to take maturity from MSPs and have that space. In my opinion, in the first year, how many MSPs, Kaylee, do you think are going to get level 2 certified?
5.
Wow.
I'm purely MSP.
Yeah, like
right.
Yeah,
people
I would
are
say
pivoting.
10 or less in the first year that will be level 2 certified that can do help desk, like on the floor type support. Now, there'll be a lot more that will get. I have this enclave that I've built. Come join it, and we'll charge you money for it. There'll be, I think, a lot. When I say a lot, like maybe 15 or 10.
Right.
In the first year, they're talking the DIB is over 200,000 small business.
Oh yeah. I saw a video on YouTube, one of the threads I was on, and that was his big comment. He's like, everybody's talking about how there's not enough assessors, and it's a problem. But the real issue is there's not enough people to get any of the DIB into this. It's just the scale. We can't scale it. There's just not enough resources.
What we're seeing is we're charging 3 to 4 times our normal MSP rate, and clients are not blinking.
Wow.
The sales process is completely different from our traditional MSP engagements. What do I mean by that? Imagine if you're sick and you go to the doctor, you're showing up like, I need a pill to fix this. You're not showing up going, do I need a doctor in the first place? Do I need drugs? You know what I mean? Like,
so true.
You were back in the day when you're cutting your teeth with the MSP space. You know how it is. People come in. You don't even educate them. What is an MSP in the first place?
You have to tell me why you're even worth my time.
Right. Yeah. You're fighting just to be able to stay in the door with them. Now what's going on is the people that are coming to us are like, look, how fast can I get assessed? How much is this going to cost me? And when can we start?
Yeah.
That's a different conversation.
Yeah, no question. Well, because some of these businesses, it's existential for them, right?
Yeah.
Like they either get certified or they can't sell what they make, right? They're a DIB supplier. That's all they do, right? Yeah, that's a big deal.
And some of these are mom and pop shops that have, this is the second or third generation, and they're 100% in the DIB space, and they have been working in there and have been entrenched. They know tons of people in the government. Those people know them. Doesn't matter. You're going to have to get level 2 if you have that type of data. And if you're not, someone else is going to get that work. It's just really comes down to that. I think there's a lot of people in that acceptance phase that they're really struggling with. Like, but I'm one of the few people. Nope, doesn't matter. Like everybody has to play by that.
Yeah.
So
Wild.
there are some people saying, well, I think I'll get an exception. Like I wouldn't base my business on it. I could tell you that.
I haven't seen a lot of
Right.
exceptions being
Well, it's
mentioned
based
in
in
the
the
rules.
contract and how that sort of works. It's a very special case. I've never
Yeah.
seen it in my life. You know, I haven't
Yeah.
been in space as much as other people have, but I know that there is such a creature out there, but I would not base my business on it. That is for sure.
No, and especially since it seems like a lot of this is being enforced by the primes. The primes don't care. The primes just want the money to flow, right? They're
Mhm.
and maybe there is
It's
a government
slow.
exception, but right? Yeah. And I've heard stories of like, you know, hey, the HVAC vendor that all he does is replace filters on the base. He's got CMMC requirements. I mean, you know, those sort of
Moving
mom and pop
companies, yeah.
businesses don't
Mhm.
even like they can't spell IT. Like they don't. It's such a daunting task for some of those companies. You know,
Yeah,
it's going to be wild.
Here's an interesting story. So, true story. So, a potential client reached out to us. This was maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago, something like that. It's been a little while. And they're like, "Yeah, we think we have some CMMC requirements, and we feel like we're really ready." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll come out," and because they were located in Jacksonville. Like, this is the first like CMMC client that I've actually visited. We've talked with tons, but they're all outside this of not even in the state. They're all outside of the state. And so I'm like, this is great. I can finally have one in my backyard. Let me go talk to him, sit down, look eye to eye with him. And I'm like, okay, you know, tell me what you guys do. Well, you know, we were really good. We don't think CMMC is really going to be happening because they're still working stuff out and this, that, and the other. Now, this was a few months ago. I'm like, what? I'm like, do you not know about 32 CFR? At that point, the proposed rule, it was still a proposed rule. I'm like, it's a proposed, like it's happening. Like you can pretty much predict the timeline. What do you mean? He's like, well, we think we're ready. And I'm like, do you have a system security plan? No. I'm like, do you like, where's your data? It's in this commercial container over here. I'm like, I'm like, no, you're not ready. And it just so happened that they were a prime. They were a 8A organization that was a prime. So I was able to look up like by their company name, like how many contracts. They had $10 million in contracts with the government, and some of which had DFIR requirements. And I'm like, because a lot of it was on base. And so I'm like, guys, this is not an option. Like you really have to do this. And they're like, eh, and they just ghosted us. They never reached back out. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So, and the bad thing too is like we attend a lot of conferences, some of which are MSP traditionally based. And
Sure.
I'll sit down at the tables and I'll listen to people talk about CMMC and kind of these MSPs' perspective and how they want to do it. And they're absolutely like what you're trying to do is they're trying to approach it like they have most everything else. And they're bringing along clients for the ride, and
Yeah.
they're listening to them. And
Yeah.
What do
I'm
we
just
call
like,
it? What do we
there is
call it?
such a reckoning that is coming in June of next year or sooner when these people
Right.
start hitting the wall. And
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to go. I mean, I would.
What do we call that way of thinking? Remember, where you walk together through the journey.
Marriage counseling for CMMC.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so many. I like a good buddy of mine in California. I mean, I respect the crap out of this guy. I mean, this guy knows his stuff, and great company. They're so detailed.
Yeah.
And he's like, look, I'm going to bring on this consulting company, and they're going to work with me and this other client that does CMMC, and we're going to just try to work through it together. I'm like, oh, dude, do not do the marriage counseling methodology, because what's going to happen is, you know, you're going to start changing your business, and you're going to start to realize that there's large components that you're going to have to change about it. And then you go to do that, and the client goes, nah, I don't think I want to do this because it's just too expensive. And now you've gone through half or a quarter or whatever much of that work
Right.
is. And now you're like, I'm out this effort and cost. Like, do I just commit and go full on? I mean, like, that approach just does not work out very well. Like 1 in
Yeah.
10, I've seen so many people try this and it's failed because
And then
it's just not a
Yeah.
good way.
And then there's the
Um,
opposite, right? Where it's like from the client's perspective, the MSP has tried to walk with them, and then they get to a certain point where that MSP is like, I actually don't
Yeah.
think I want to do this. And
Yes.
they bow out. So then the client doesn't have anybody. And so then they have to find somebody that can, so both sides of the coin.
Yes. I definitely, well, we were not at that level, but we looked into CMMC a couple of years ago when we were still Machine Logic, and we were like, yeah, let's do this. This looks great. And then I just quickly could just tell that this was where it was headed. We're like, we're not ready to drink this Kool-Aid. This is not who we are. But I'm also amazed by how many MSPs and third-party vendors are advertising against CMMC. Like, you'll go to some of these conferences and the GRC tools are like, oh, we'll help you with your CMMC. And the antivirus tools are like, hey, we'll help you with your CMMC. And you're like, you guys aren't, there's no way you're FedRAMP. Like, you don't even understand what you're selling. Like, you probably can't be a tool in this space, but you're using it as a selling point. And there's going to be a lot of really angry people when they realize that they've been sold a bill of goods by vendor A or vendor B.
Yeah, with the rule that came out with 32, they relaxed some of the requirements for tools that you can use.
Mm-hmm. For cloud service providers, you mean?
Yeah. So it definitely opened the door, but what do we call it, Kaylee?
What do we call what? We call so many things, so many things.
That situation. It's an Admiral Akbar.
Oh yes, it is a trap.
Yes. It's a trap.
It's a major trap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a trap because these companies are, while yes, the ruling on that has relaxed so that you can start to use non-FedRAMP based products if it does not contain CUI.
Yeah.
The problem though is we find a lot of those vendors just aren't transparent enough for you to appropriately pass your audit using those tools.
Right.
And so even though the sales slick is like, we can help you. And then when you're like, okay, well, do you have like a system security plan you can share with us, a good responsibility matrix, what your stance is on these things? How do you have access control? And you start asking them all these questions. They're like, whoa, why are you coming at me, bro? And you're like, you said you're supposed to be okay in this space. This is the kind of information I need in order for me to be able to pass using your tool.
Right. Well, and isn't it all going to come down to the audit and the assessors where they go, prove it. It's all going to come down to that prove it question, right? And the more variables you bring in, the harder it is to prove.
Well, it sounds like to me like a lot of these pain points or maybe like weak points in these systems are going to become apparent when assessments start to happen a lot more often.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to start noticing maybe some different lingo because unfortunately, probably some people will learn stuff the harder way, which is unfortunate. But when so many people, I mean, you just love the letter CMMC nowadays, especially in the marketing world. It looks really good because, in marketing, they're like, find your purple cow. What makes you different? We just had a discussion about this the other day. And what's making a lot of these MSPs different is the letters CMMC. And they don't actually have the proof. And the proof is in the pudding. They don't have the pudding to back it up. And it's, I mean, some do, but but it's just hard. And this is why we really try to educate too, not only MSPs, because we want many MSPs to do this, properly and encourage them to climb with us. I mean, we're doing it. We're encouraging others to do it, but also we're encouraging clients to ask their MSPs the right questions to fully know where they're at. Like, where are you? And it sucks that sometimes it's like pulling teeth. Like, you have to ask multiple different ways and in different areas to get the correct answer. But like, ask those questions to know where the MSP is truly at in their CMMC journey. And this is to, clients that are in the DIB space that rely on this business to do their work. Then there's the others that maybe it's like 5-10% of their business and they're like, man, we might not do it. It's probably not worth it for us. We'll just stick with you guys. Whatever, that's fine too. But just be honest with those people where it's like their literal business is hanging on this. It's their livelihood. It's how they grow and how they work. So
And we've always tried to be very open about it. Like I just had an MSP reach out to me. I think it was yesterday. Adam was talking on a fireside chat, and they were like, "Hey, can we talk to you about CMMC?" And I'm like, "Sure." I literally sent them a link and talked with the owner and their lead engineer and spent an hour explaining sort of what we've seen and like, here's the reality. And I was perfectly transparent with how the path looks and what was going on. He's like, I don't think this is something that we want to do. He's like, it's just one client. There were 5 users. Like, I don't want to try to move into this market right now. We're doing great where we're at. I'm like, okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
That's fine. But, it was a good, he really did. But here's the problem is he didn't have anybody to talk to that's already kind of been on the hill that can kind of say, this is what the hill looks like. So I think a lot of really good MSPs are kind of sort of stepping into that space because they just don't have anyone they can talk with that can kind of tell them this is what the top of the hill looks like. And we're getting assessed next month. So our assessment is scheduled next month. We've already been assessed by our C3PO and we got a letter of attestation. So the company that we basically got a gap assessment. They didn't do any consulting. They just came in and actually went through all 110 assessment objectives, the 110 controls, 320 assessment objectives, and went through and we got a perfect 110. So we felt really good about that. So we're feeling good about January. But the fact of the matter is, just because we get our level 2 certification, we're not done. I don't consider myself really like a good MSP that's doing CMMC until I have moved multiple clients through that journey.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
To me, it doesn't really count until you do that. But I can at least be transparent for those people who are considering it. Like, what does it look like from where you're at? And I'll say, so reach out to us. We have no problem talking about it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good call because there's the one perspective is like some of this conversation has been a little bit of FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. This is a big deal, and there's some reality behind that, right? You're talking about, if you go beyond the DIB to the entire federal government and all federal government subcontractors who might be covered by this, could be millions of companies impacted by this, right? I've seen 200 or 300 in the DIB, and there could be millions. So the impact is massive of people not figuring this out. There's a lot of companies impacted. But I think there's also just some of what you were talking about. It seems like in the coming months, we're going to have some more concrete things to go. Like, hey, here's some people who didn't pass. Here's why. Here's the people who are passing. Let's start sharing the knowledge. Let's start talking about what's working, what's not. And I think, that's where some of the groups that you guys are involved in, your podcast is great. So check out Climbing Mount CMMC. Definitely worth listening to if you're wanting to keep up to date with this stuff. You're involved in the CyberX, right? The MSP CyberX.
Ryan Hubbard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I feel like that's one of those places. I feel like getting into some of these communities, if somebody's really wrestling with this, is gonna be critical if you want to navigate it. Just being able to learn from other people's pain, right?
For sure.
What they've done well and what they didn't do well.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, I'll share some specifics I think that would be helpful. My wife was peeking. She's seeing Are you okay? All right. So if you're going to go after CMMC, so if you're an MSP and you're like, what does the hill sort of look like? I'll throw some things out that I think will help people pretty quickly. And if they want to talk more about it, sure, let's do it. Do you think that's a good idea, Nathan?
Yeah, I think anybody like you that's willing to talk with you and Shell and a few other people in the space have always blown me away with your willingness to just, be available to people, which I think is incredible.
Well, I just, I didn't really have that. So I'm thinking to myself, man, it would be great if I had somebody. To be honest with you, I don't know if I would have done it. Now that I'm at
Right.
where I'm at, like so maybe put your earmuffs in and don't listen, or just go ahead and hit disconnect on what I'm saying, because maybe you don't want to.
Oh gosh.
But like, you really, I think first and foremost, you need to be willing to dedicate a person, for the right person who knows what they're doing, 6 to 8 months before you would even have a chance of getting this done. And I'm talking about them doing mostly just that. Now,
Are you talking about an intern?
No. Okay. So I was going to get into that. Nicely done, son. Honey. Nice job. So what she means is it needs to be somebody who knows that. So whether you bring in a consultant who has and don't just bring in anyone, it needs to be somebody like a C3PO or somebody who really knows what they're doing, who has gone through it, JSVA assessments or other types of assessments and understand it. They can kind of say, okay, let's work on building an environment that you can support your clients out of. And you can sort of design how you want to support your clients out. And it even goes beyond that. Like, how are you going to create your agreements? How are you going to do your quoting? How are you going to do your pricing? How are you going to track your efficiency? Because the last thing you want to do is get into a space and lose money, right? You want to be able to make sure you make money. So you need to think about all of that, right? So how am I going to have my design? I need to have a resource to do it. And then you got to pay that person, right? So you don't really want to go after that. You got to have at least 6 figures in your war chest. I would recommend $200K if you're going to try it. And it's not that you have to stroke a $200K check, but you have to be able to pull from that over a course of a year and a half, maybe even 2, as you go through this journey, because you got to pay for the person, you got to pay for legal fees, you got to pay for your licenses, you got to pay for other additional software stuff and some consulting fees and all this other stuff. And now you might think, oh, I'm smart enough, I can pull that off. Well, then you're smarter than me, because they're just, I've not met that person that knows all of that has been there, that I'm just not that crazy enough to like. There's even with the stuff I know, I still pull in my C3PO to ask questions and try to see. Because you don't want to build a crooked foundation. It is a bad day when you're building a skyscraper on that, and you find that out.
Yeah,
thing starts tipping.
Yes.
And so
yes.
That's really what you're sort of looking down the barrel. If you want to do that, what kind of commitment is required in order for you to do that? And I remember I was playing cornhole at a conference with a guy, and he's like, yeah, we're really serious about CMMC. I'm like, oh, that's great, man. He's like, yeah, we're really close. And I'm like, so you have your SSP? No, we don't have our SSP yet. I'm like, and I'm like, so what kind of container you're putting in? Do I need a container? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I don't think I need that. Like, I should be able to support him where I'm at. I'm like, let's just play cornhole, man. I got nothing for you.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just like this denial that they're sort of living in, and they think that they can figure out how to do it in a way. And maybe I'm wrong, Maybe they can go through some kind of magical assessment and pass, but not in the way that I've seen.
Yeah, and I think the next couple months will clear that up, right? A few people are going to be really surprised. I do think it's a good call out that it's very much like AI. I keep on calling out that I'm a pretty savvy guy. I've been doing this 20 years. I've done engineering. I've done a lot of aspects of our space. Man, AI breaks my brain. I just don't know how to think natively AI. I go search instead of go chat, right? Like I have given these muscle memory, and I just find that my brain is trying to learn this new reality where I can go have AI do things for me that I used to do for myself. And it's a hard learning curve. And I think this CMMC is a very similar thing where, those of us in the MSP space, we're competent. We've done this well for many years. We've navigated a lot of evolutions of our industry. But I think AI and CMMC aren't evolutions. They're paradigm shifts. You have to understand that you don't understand what you don't understand. And it's going to take you a long time to learn the things you don't understand and understand what else you still don't understand, because it is such a big shift. The level of detail of, like you said, these audits and assessments and these regulations is staggering. This is not a PCI scan where you can go pay somebody and say, scan my IPs and scan my file share, and now I'm PCI compliant. This is not your grandma's, PCI compliance test.
So it's funny. Let's talk a little bit about audits, because I think it's really interesting, and I sort of have this analogy, and I promise it actually connects. Like you've seen these people where they will spend like 2 or 3 weeks doing a shoot for like a 5-second clip on the movie, right? And you're like, but it's really an awesome 5-second clip, but they spent like 3 weeks getting the camera angles on shoot and the location, and they threw some. That's sort of how the audit works, right? You will spend a lot of time getting the evidence and collecting it in the audit because you don't know exactly what direction the auditor is going to come at you from. And you have to know in your bones that you are doing it the right way. You might say, yeah, my Sentinel's working. You're like, okay, but are your data connectors connected? Yeah, they're connected. But all of your users, like are all your devices connected to it? And are they appropriately reporting?
And can you prove that?
Like, I don't know. Like, how do you know? Like, what's your process to validate that it is happening the right way? Because if the auditor asks you that and you're like, you know, it's not going to go real well, because the way that the audit works is it's very much like a dance. So they'll say, okay, 3.1.1, we're on alpha. What do you guys have for us about that? And you're like, this, and this. Okay, do you have the evidence for that? I have this here. And they're like, all right, they take little notes. And they're like, all right, on Bravo, what do you have there for that? And you go, well, this is what I have this. You know, this is the document we have. Yep, we read that document in phase 1. Yep, we're good there. All right, Delta, what is that? And they just go through and and you just got to go pop, 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 pop. And you've got to hit it, right? Every one. And the faster you can answer those questions, the faster you can get them out of that audit, because you don't want their dwell time over your environment any longer than it has to be. And so you want to get them in and get them out. And so when you're going through that takes a lot of time and preparation to make sure that you're prepared, because you don't know how it's going to go. And that's where that kind of, like I'm saying, that photo, like that movie shoot, is because you could spend 3 weeks in getting this and they don't even ask you a peep about it. You know, you might have spent all this time getting screenshots and they're like, yeah, we saw your SSP statement. It crushed it. We feel good about it. And they just go on to the next one. And you didn't,
you don't know. You don't know.
But this is why they do it, because, you know, of compliance and security, and making companies do this because they've been saying that they've been doing it for so long and they haven't actually been doing it. And so now the government is like, we are so sick of our planes and our diagrams and our things starting to show up randomly in China. And why is that the case, you know? And so one thing that is for certain is, you know, people ask us all the time, when is CMMC going to go away? Is it going to be gone? You know what I mean? But no, because the problem is not going away. It's getting worse. Cyber attacks are getting worse. They're not getting better. You know, cybercrime is not fake. It's real. Cybersecurity is still real. And if all of those things are still real, the government is going to push a program like this on people that have their information. And, you know, some people might say, but it's it's unclassified. You know, it's not supposed to be classified. Well, you just got to be really, really careful, because some of the things that they mark as CUI is marked there because, you know, they need to push that out to manufacturing companies that might not be able to handle classified information or things like that.
We'll slide this in a CUI. So, I mean,
you're whispering it in,
right?
Controlled unclassified. Yeah.
I mean, because if you think about it, the F-32 is not going to be like CUI. That's going to be, you know, those missile systems, other things are going to be more classified, but other subsystems and other things like, you get the picture.
You get the picture.
Yep, I get the picture. Well, thank you for your time. We definitely have easily filled an hour. Brandon wasn't here to give us the hook, which is this is what happens when Nathan runs the call. Very much appreciate your time. Great conversation. I'm just always fascinated to learn more. Thank you for all you do giving back, whether it's on your podcasts, you know, your offer just to be a resource. You know, it's clear that you're just one of the many people in our industry. One of the things we love about this industry is just there's a camaraderie, there's co-opetition at this volume of work. There's no reason to be.
I like that.
There's no need to be. You know, these aren't trade secrets. There's not enough there won't be enough people to do all this work for a long time. It's not a turf war, and so I love that that's your attitude, and hopefully it's helpful to people. And I'm sitting here eating my popcorn, watching this, seeing how it goes. I'm very curious. So
I love that you have your popcorn because we had to throw ours away a while ago.
yeah, you guys are on military rations at this point, just trying to keep it going.
Sure.
Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. And yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, go check out Bobby and Kaylee on Climbing Mount CMMC, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
Hopefully next week Brandon's back and feeling better, and like and subscribe. Tell your friends and neighbors about it. They'll be really interested by it, I'm sure. And we will catch you next time on the podcast. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. It was weird to not say